Cut.
Boom. All right.
Okay, so this is it. All right,
Here we
so
are.
now we got to figure out. Okay,
This is a movie about figuring out how to make a movie.
All right. Now, what are we talking about?
oh wait. We're gonna do. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make like my reference to my own work. I'm GH Hovagimyan, and this is Stephen Zacks, and this is Sean Mooney, and Stephen Zacks is a author, sociologist,
Sure. You keep making it up.
curator,
Keep going in that direction.
social organizer,
philosopher, theorist.
theorist, very good. And Sean Mooney is a artist curator, and has a particular focus on Eskimo miniature bone carvings,
Something like that, yeah.
something like
And
that.
hot dog vendor.
And a hot dog vendor. Okay, so we're here to. Oh, and by the way, this is the first show of ArtDirt 360. ArtDirt 360. Okay, yes, it's been reborn. It's the Griffin
We need a theme song.
rising from the ashes. Okay, so now, so we're gonna test this here. So Stephen, I'm gonna ask you to elaborate more on who you are or what your thoughts are at the moment. Now, Stephen has been telling me that he's because Stephen did this Flint. Stephen, tell me what you did in Flint aside from living there and all of that stuff.
Okay. Well, I am a Flint native who migrated to New York City in the mid '90s, and never dreamed of going back. But after about a dozen years writing for Metropolis magazine and reporting on art, architecture, and urbanism around the world, a friend of mine from middle school and I had a beer on the frying pan on the Hudson River.
I thought you're gonna have a beer on a frying pan. I mean, what? It's like a new yuppie kind of a thrill. Beer on a frying pan.
On the frying pan, the sunken lightship that was reclaimed from below New York Harbor.
Oh yeah.
And he asked me, would you ever go do a project in Flint? And I said, fuck no, I would never go back to Flint. But then I wrote a proposal for this kind of wide-ranging project for how art, architecture, and urban practices could be used as a variety of tools of research and urban intervention in my hometown, which resulted in the formation of Flint Public Art Project, which is a nonprofit organization that uses art and design to activate vacant spaces and amplify the local culture and connect people among places and ideally transform the image of the city. So recently I was invited by the Land Bank in Newburgh, New York, which is a town which has a quite similar socioeconomic character to Flint. It has lots of vacant property. It has the poorest congressional district in New York State, and it has a lot of local assets that people wouldn't be aware of because the reputation regionally is more of a crime-ridden poor town with high taxes that mostly has a negative image. And so we're talking with the Land Bank and local artists and organizers about starting a similar kind of public art agency there. So that's that project.
Fantastic. Now, Stephen, thank you, Stephen. Sean? And Sean Mooney is, we were talking, actually, this is an ulterior motive. This is actually a test for a project that Sean and I are working on, which is to have a roundtable discussion with other artists who use technology. And Sean, you can tell us a little bit
Take it
about.
from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, well, this test run is for what would probably become its own project in the course of planning for another project, which the first idea was to get look at a small group of artists who have been using quote unquote technology. Stone carving is technology, but electronics, equipment of one kind or another in early stages of its development commercially. So one of the people we talked about was Bob Whitman, who started the experiments in art and technology in the mid '60s with Robert Rauschenberg and Billy Kluver, and did these 9 evenings performances at the Park Avenue Armory in 1966. And Whitman did the environment, but it involved choreographers and dancers and composers. John Cage did a piece, and Yvonne Rainer did a piece, and Rauschenberg did sort of early performance art on a large scale. And part of that event was having experimental telecommunications equipment available from Bell Labs, a precursor to Verizon. And they made available to the artists equipment that the public had never seen. And so a large part of the interactive of that event was the audience would given remote controls and things like that, and they could move the dancers around on the stage on these remote controlled boxes and things. So there's some very playful attitude at the time about the tools of technological tools that could be used in compelling artistic ways. And so other artists like yourself and like Eric Egas is a friend of mine from childhood, basically, an artist living upstate who developed a kind of computer software. He's a lifelong painter and started doing video environments or film environments in the late 70s and 80s using slide projectors, and was always kind of experimenting with ways to create immersive imagery, sort of 3D painting, so to speak. And sometime in the 80s or early 90s, he developed this C++ program to allow a computer to talk to an architectural plotter to make drawings. And he developed it into a real CAD software. It was a very early CAD software, and he made a very decent living building computer systems for architects. But the initial purpose of it was to create this communication device, sort of an extension of a mechanism for drawing. And so he made these very beautiful photo-based drawings with the interaction of the CAD system, and has now developed that into a kind of holographic photo printing technique, which is still very much about painting, but about optics and the process of recording something.
Well, it's a 3D red and green separation.
Yeah.
That converges, so it's 3D video or 3D photography basically.
Yeah.
But based upon the red and green perception.
Yeah, purely optics, and and that's been his orientation all along, sort of optical phenomenon. But it's the performative aspect that I think is the linking figure for the three of you, so far as we've gotten. This is sort of my own interpretation of. I think the discussion with the three of us will tease out a lot more, and then we'll start seeing like, okay, what are some other artists who are working in this way of thinking or were early pioneers of. I think of Nancy Burson doing the Age Machine, and